It's October 8th, 2020. This is Roqe. Hi there, I'm Jian Ghomeshi. Welcome to episode number 51 of Roqe. Salam Dustan Aziz. And hello to you on all our platforms, YouTube, SoundCloud, Instagram, Spotify, iTunes, and Telegram. So, as you may know, Iranians are in mourning. Persian music's grand maestro, the one and only Mohammad-Reza Shajarian, passed away today after a long battle with cancer. And this is news that has reverberated in Iranian communities around the world since we first heard word of it earlier today. So as such, we have changed our planned programming for this episode of Roqe entirely. We're going to do an entire special edition, a full show dedicated to Shajarian, an icon of Iranian music and culture. In the coming 2 hours, we're going to speak with some Iranians of note around the world to hear their thoughts and memories and reflections on this sad day. We will go to California to hear from Abbas Milani, Erfan, Farid Zoland, and Hamid Nikpay. We're going to be joined by Babak Amini, Golrokh Aminian, and Fariba Davoodi in Canada. Azimi and Iraj Janati Ataie in London, England, Safoura Safavi in Stockholm, Hamid, Motebassem in the Netherlands, Yahya Alkhansa in New York, Hooman Khalatbari in Austria, as well as Amir Koushkani and Maestro Arsalan Kamkar in Iran. So this show will be in both English and Farsi because we just turned it around and we haven't had the time to do subtitles. So we hope that those who cannot understand Persian will stick with us through some of the interviews that are not entirely in English and vice versa. We hope this will serve as a remembrance and a document of this day and this legend. Welcome to the special edition of Roqe, a tribute to Shajarian. First, a few words about the man who has inspired Iranians all over the world and led to a global day of mourning. Singer, instrumentalist, and composer Maestro Mohammad-Reza Shajarian embodied classical Iranian music for more than half a century, both at home and abroad. He was hailed as one of National Public Radio's 50 greatest voices of all time. He was 80 years old. He earned the title of Ostad, Master, and was beloved for his commanding voice that could cry with haunting pain and soar with deep soul. Soon after the news of his passing broke, thousands of fans converged on the Jam Hospital in Tehran, where he'd been admitted a few days ago in critical condition. Special anti-riot forces were deployed by the regime and mourners were beaten and dispersed. Mohammad-Reza Shajarian was born in 1940 in the Iranian city of Mashhad. Beginning at the age of 5, he learned Quranic recitation from his father. As he has recounted, his father was very conservative and religious and considered any music that wasn't Quranic recitation haram or forbidden. But his uncle was a music lover and encouraged him to explore Persian classical and folk music. At 12, he began his initiation, in secret from his parents, to the santur, a Persian stringed instrument whose roots date back to pre-Islamic Persia. He was trained to perform the radif, the traditional repertoire that forms the basis of Persian secular music that every artist is expected to master before moving on to improvisation, typical in Iranian classical music. In 1959, he made his debut on radio, and his voice quickly carried him to fame. He became one of the mainstays on the legendary Golrokh radio programs, where he went by the name of Siavash. Shajarian quit Iranian radio and television a few days after Black Friday, September 8, 1978, denouncing the massacre of demonstrators carried out on that day by the Shah's regime. Then, in the turbulent days of the 1979 revolution, when bloody clashes between protesters and security forces were happening in major Iranian cities, Shajarian released his only revolutionary single, My Brother is Drenched in Blood, which became one of the greatest revolutionary anthems of the day. After the Islamic Revolution, he accused the authorities of wanting to use him as a docile musician to make people believe they are not completely opposed to music. Shajarian had been critical of the Islamic Republic, which he accused of being opposed to the very idea of the Persian identity of Iranians. The first time that he really ran afoul of the Islamic regime in Iran dates back to 1985, at the height of post-revolutionary repression, in what is now referred to as the Dark Decade in the Persian solar calendar. In those days, when any sign of dissent could lead to a real risk to one's life, Shajarian produced the Bidad, or Injustice album. In Bidad, Shajarian recited legendary Persian poet Hafez and sang, "This was the land of camaraderie and kindness. When did kindness end, and what became of the princes?" In 1997, he assailed the state broadcaster in an open letter, accusing it of using his works without permission, of censoring them, and generally ignoring moral values. The maestro demanded they stop airing his voice, except two pieces, Munajat and Rabbana, psalms taken from the Quran that he only allowed to be played during Ramadan. In the 2009 contested presidential elections, which led to mass protests across Iran's major cities, Shajarian released the epic single Brothers in Arms, which became the theme song of the protests. In English, the lyrics read, "Join me, dear, don't remain in pain, since this mutual pain will not cease when we stand alone." When the regime began its bloody repression of the protests, Shajarian released another single which reverberated throughout the nation, singing a poem by contemporary Persian poet Fereydun Mushiri. Shajarian called on the regime henchmen to lay down their arms. The song reads, "Lay down your arms, as I despise seeing this blood-dripping ill contraption. Your gun is the voice of fire and Iran, but faced with this evil tool, I only speak from my heart, filled with your love." The clerical leadership retaliated by banning him from holding concerts and releasing albums, but this appeared to only increase his appeal. Throughout his life, he received a series of accolades, including awards from the United Nations Cultural Agency, UNESCO. In 1999, the agency gave him the Picasso Award, and in 2006, he received its Mozart Medal in honor of his contributions to the world of music. A devotee of Persian music in its pure form, Shajarian also delved into experimentation through the creation of new instruments based on traditional ones. Maestro Shajarian, who will reportedly be buried in Mashhad, leaves behind an imposing discography. He was the musical voice of a culture and became the political voice of an oppressed people. Let me get to our first guest on this special edition of Roqe. Dr. Abbas Milani is an historian and author of numerous acclaimed books. He is a visiting professor of political science and the director of the Iranian Studies program at Stanford University. He's also a research fellow and co-director of the Iran Democracy Project at Stanford University's Hoover Institution. And Abbas Milani joins us from Palo Alto, California right now. Hello, sir.
Good afternoon to you and to all your listeners.
It's always good to talk to you, but of course this is a sad occasion. Tell me how you are feeling upon hearing the news that Ustad Shajarian has died.
It is a feeling of a great loss. It's a feeling of a national loss. I think it is truly a day of mourning for all Iran, all Iranians, anyone who loves music, and anyone who is worried about the dignity of artists and the ability of artists to stand up to dogmatism, to despotism, to the temptations of the market, and be willing to pay the high price that such resistance always entails. He was a remarkable human being, and even a more remarkable artist. And I think he is an epochal figure. He isn't just a person for this day and age. He changed the face of music in a way. He preserved Persian classical poetry in a way. He expanded the instrumentation of classical music in a way that he will be, I think, one of the iconic figures in this enduring thing we call the culture of the Persian language and of the Persian people.
Abbas Jan, you've said a lot there. I want to ask you about what he means, what this means, particularly his death socially and politically even. But let's stick with the culturally first. You touched on a few things there. Give me some perspective of what made him so vital and significant as an artist, as a musical artist.
I think before the revolution, what made him so outstanding was that he brought a fresh voice, and he had deeply immersed himself in the nuances of classical Persian music, but never gave in to the temptations of the market. He was easily the most, maybe one of the 2-3 most popular, sought-after performers, but he never performed privately. He never performed in a cabaret. He never performed in weddings. He could make millions by those days' standards. He forfeited because he thought there is a different place for classical music. And when the Islamic regime came, he initially sided with the people. And once he realized that this regime is standing against the people and is a despotic, dogmatic regime, he stood with the people against the regime. For 20 years, they didn't allow him to perform in Iran. They didn't allow him to sell his records. But he stood firm. He stood against despotism. He stood for the independence of artists. And he stood for the culture of Persian poetry. I think for a whole generation of Iranians, and many maybe in diaspora, their familiarity with Sa'di, with Hafiz, with Maulana, with Attar, with Khayyam, begin with him. He just did a remarkable job of bridging these gaps and telling the world that there is much that is happening in classical Persian music that deserves to be heard.
We have a number of musicians coming on who will, I imagine, speak to what he meant to them musically. And you know, even despite the fact that there are people in the streets in Iran and that there are people all over the world feeling the impact of this, it almost feels too soon to start talking politics. But you did just call him an epochal figure. And there's this sense that he is unifying us in a way that almost nobody could. The mourning feels universal around the world in the diaspora and from within Iran. Can you speak to that?
I think that's absolutely true. I think he is a figure that, except for the die-hard despotic advocates of religious dogmatism in Iran who don't like music, like Khamenei himself, who has said music should be banned, and who don't like Shajarian for standing up to them. There's a universal outpouring in Iran of grief. The regime has kept it completely, tried to underplay it, but there is a sense I get from listening to people in Iran, to watching some of the programs, that there is a sort of a spontaneous effort to turn this into the day of national mourning, because he is an artist who stood not just in his art with the people, but also with his politics, also with his ability to show a different form of being an artist, of saying no to despotism, no to crass commercialism, no to being instrumentalized by anyone, and saying, I stand here firmly. to defend my rights as an artist, but he was also extremely concerned about the political situation in Iran. One of the things that I today, for the first time after 15 years, told people is that 15 years ago almost, he gave to me a document, maybe 10 years is more accurate now. 10 years ago, he gave me a document that he had helped prepare. And he had consulted with a lot of jurists and a lot of political activists and political scientists in Iran, in diaspora, about preparing a draft of a constitution for the transition to a more democratic, secular, democratic Iran. For an artist of his caliber to spend so much time and take so much risks, because had they found this in his home in Iran, you can imagine they would have even persecuted him more. It shows that he was an artist, that he was a consummate vocalist, a consummate musicologist, an erudite in the tradition of Iranian poetry, the likes of which I have rarely seen, dedicated to his art, and willing to take the price for standing independently. To give you a sense of his status, long before this recent political, or today's political manifestation of grief, in Farhadi's film, Separation.
Yes.
When they're separating, when the woman is leaving Iran, and the husband says, "Take anything you want." He said, "The only thing I want to take is this Shajarian CD."
Yeah.
In other words, a woman who has become sick and tired of Iran, when she wants to leave, Shajarian is that piece of Iran that she wants to take with him. He's become the embodiment of all that is the best in Iranian culture.
This was pretty significant news that you came out with today, that Master Shajarian had left a document with you asking you to publish it after his passing. So per your personal and direct knowledge of him, can you summarize his hopes, his aspirations for the Iranian nation in a nutshell?
I think his hopes were for a transition to a secular democratic Iran. His anxieties and his fears were that this regime is not going to give up easily. He repeatedly told anyone who was close to him that I have lived with these people, because he came from a religious background. He began as a singer of Quran. They're not going to give up this easily. So he was very worried about what lies ahead, but it was clear, unambiguous, what he hoped would be ahead and what he was willing to help bring about. A secular, democratic, rational, law-abiding Iran, where one can play music, unlike Iran, that are banned from singing vocalists. He trained a whole generation of Iranian women singers, although singing for Iranian women vocalists in Iran, inside Iran, is banned. But he went out of his way to train them. And when he was receiving the Beta Prize at Stanford, and somebody asked him about this, he was going back to Iran. He knew this would come to haunt him, but he was defiant, brave, honest enough and to say, "Who the hell are you people?" By who you are people meant the Islamic Republic, the regime. Khamenei, the clerics who had banned the music. He said, "Who are you to ban half of the people from music?" And then he continued. He said, "They tell us that the voice of woman arouses us." Well, don't be aroused, he said. Don't listen. Why don't you ban men? Voice of men would arouse women. I mean, there was a defiance in him, and there was a willingness to support the cause of woman artists, for example. That is absolutely brilliant. And again, people often say these things in the privacy of their homes. But to say this at Stanford University, knowing that the Iranian regime is doubly sensitive about it, to say it on television programs where he did interviews when he was in diaspora, that takes a different level of valor.
And he lived
he had it.
he lived in Iran. I mean, we've talked so much about how the current Iranian government, the regime, uses fear as a way of neutralizing any kind of dissent. How was he able to hurdle over that so bravely, seemingly?
Well, I think two things. One was that he was willing to take a risk, and he was willing to pay a price. I mean, he paid millions in lost revenues for not being allowed to perform in Iran. He was easily the most popular musical performance. For 20 years, they didn't let him. And they didn't let him to sell his CDs legally in Iran. He told me at one time that he calculated that only 7% of people who listen to his music have bought his music. So, but he was willing to forfeit all of that, to stand on the right side of the people, to stand on the right side of history. That's why there is such a, as you said, consensus about his role. And then I'm not an expert on music. I'm a fan of his music, but I've been interested. I've written a little bit about music and modernity in Iran. He's going to be a very, very important figure in bringing traditional music of Iran into the modern age by the way he orchestrated, by the way he used women in his orchestras, by his invention of multiple new instruments. Shajarian has invented multiple instruments and made them himself because he was a great carpenter to enable a classical Persian musical ensemble to perform all the notes. He said there are some of the traditional Iranian musical instruments that can't perform some of these notes. I want to be able to do exactly that. So he understood classical Western music. He understood classical Persian music better than almost maybe anybody. And he was willing to say, in these areas, our classical music is wanting. And this is the way we take it to this new modernity, to this new global music. I'm sure you know when NPR was doing these series of 50 greatest voices.
Yes, I mentioned it in the intro, yeah.
Yeah.
He's up there, yeah.
He's up there.
One doesn't want to be inappropriate on this. A day of what we're trying to do is remember him and respect him, and there will be all kinds of analysis and guessing of where this all goes. And so it's probably too early to use terms like a turning point or something. But we have seen spontaneous gatherings and protests happening in Tehran since his passing. Do you think the maestro remains a challenge to the Iranian regime in his death as he was in his life?
Absolutely. I mean, there are already, I'm sure you have seen it, there are already clips on people gathering outside the hospital and riot police using tear gases, using batons, electrical batons on people to disperse them. They're trying to whisk away his body so that there isn't a massive congregation of people. And they'll do everything they can to not allow this to become a day of mass demonstration. But I think it's all for naught. Iranian society is more complicated, more organized, more social media savvy. They have already turned it into a national event. There's nothing the regime can do. So in life, as in death, he was and is and will be a challenge to all advocates of despotism, dogmatism, and instrumentalized art.
A final question. Do you have a personal memory either with him or with his music that your mind went to when you heard the news of his passing?
Jian, in the past couple of years, I've known how sick he was. Everybody knew. I wasn't privy to any private information, although I knew from when he was here how seriously sick he was. And the only consolation that I've had in this 2 years as I bike back and forth to work is listening to his music. And sometimes weeping with it, sometimes laughing with it, sometimes getting soaring emotions of what humanity is, and sometimes feeling this great lacuna that he is about to leave us, although his music will remain. I know for a fact that he has recorded privately many, many, many songs that are even more critical of the status quo than what we have heard. I just hope that those have landed in the right hand and will be gradually released so that people know the true measure of the man, truly a man for all seasons and all ages.
Abbas Milani, as ever, it is good to talk to you. Thank you for this today. Be safe, and I hope to see you soon.
I hope so too. I wish you good luck.
Bye-bye. Our next guest is Babak Amini. With over 150 albums, music videos, and film scores in Iran and outside Iran, to his credit, Babak is one of the best-known musicians, composers, and guitarists in our diaspora, as well as in Iran. And right now, Babak Amini joins us from Toronto, Canada. Hello, my friend.
Hello, Jian.
Sad news today for all Iranians. I saw what you've been posting on social media. Babak, tell me how you're feeling upon hearing the news that Maestro Shajarian has died.
I'm really sad, and but in a way, nobody's more alive than Mr. Shajarian. Maybe he passed away, but his music and the impact that he had to our music industry, not even the music industry, to everybody, all the Iranians, is so huge that he's gonna be with the Iranian culture and Iranian forever.
One of the things that seems amazing about him, Babak, is that he was officially a classical musician, but the impact that he's had on different generations and different genres of musicians is so impressive. What did Ustad Shajarian mean to you musically?
I know Ustad Shajarian since I was, I think, 10 years old, because my dad introduced Mr. Shajarian. They had a kind of idol. My dad and Mr. Shajarian, they had an idol and teacher. His name was Mr. Dadbe, and Mr. Dadbe and Shajarian, they had a little album also called Dar Soug Banan. His artistic name was John Suz, and so through John Suz, through Mr. Dadbe, I got to know Mr. Shajarian, also his son Humayun, and Mr. Shajarian is not just about singing and the knowledge that he had for the Iranian traditional music. His personality and it was very charismatic and very knowledgeable guy, and he has his own strong opinions about everything, and he was like a strong role model for all Iranians, all the musicians, especially traditional musicians. So everybody learned something from him.
Given that you knew him personally, what would be, when I say his name, when you think of him, when you heard that he had died today, what's a very personal reminiscence that you have? What do you think of him as a man?
His charisma, he was extremely strong personality, strong mind, and he was solid man. I can say that.
It's too early to try and figure out exactly what the impact of this is going to have on Iranian culture, Iranian politics, people inside Iran, people outside of Iran. And we really wanted to spend this day just remembering him and respecting him. But how important do you believe what he had to say politically has been in recent years?
He was against the dictatorship all the time, and he was so openly speaking against the regime, and he was so strong, and nobody could do anything about it. All the government, all the people in the government, they couldn't do anything about it, and they couldn't handle Mr. Shajarian, control Mr. Shajarian.
Why couldn't they? I mean, they've gone after. He was just too important.
Influence, right. Yeah, too important. So much influence to the people, and they couldn't touch him, basically. But the only thing that they could do, just ban him to sing, like not giving him permission for the concerts, and those kind of things that they could do. But they couldn't put him to the jail, or do something crazy to him. And this is an example, big, beautiful example to all the Iranians that they scared of this dictatorship government, dictators, Let
me ask you a final question, Babakjan. One of the things that I really appreciate about you is not just your musicianship and your composing skills, but you're a great producer, and you produce a lot of voices. You produce a lot of singers. So I wanted to reserve this question for you. What was it about his voice? What is it about his voice, Mohammad-Reza Shajarian, that is so magical?
Magic comes, like 50% of that magic comes from the information and the technique that he had. And another 50% came from the charismatic and the influence that he had to people. He was singing so technical, so hard to even understand. The way that he was singing, it was really hard to understand what he's singing. It was so technical, but it was so beautiful in a way, and he was delivering everything so beautiful and technical that nobody could copy it except his son. But he's different, but he trained beautiful master vocalist as himself. His son is fantastic musician, fantastic vocalist as well, and he trained him.
Babak, thanks for taking the time today, brother.
Pleasure, my brother.
Talk soon.
به خزان زرد زمان نه زمان را درد کسی نه کسی را درد زمان.
You are listening to our Roqe special, Tribute to Shajarian. Our next guest is a very special one. Maestro Arsalan Kamkar is a prolific composer and musician. He learned the preliminaries of music from his father, Master Arsalan Kamkar, and in his childhood he performed in several ensembles directed by his late father. After the completion of his studies, he worked with the Tehran Symphony Orchestra as a violin player. In addition to violin, he is a highly skilled barbat, lute, and oud player. He is now the concertmaster and soloist of the Tehran Symphony Orchestra, and at the same time he's a valued member of Kamkarha Music Ensemble. And right now, Arsalan Kamkar joins us from Kordon, Iran. Arsalan Jan, merci que omadin. I really appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you.
خواهش میکنم. در خدمتم. بفرمایید.
Tell me, first of all, Dan in Moghayat, how you are feeling upon hearing the news that Ustad Shajarian has died.
خب طبیعی خیلی خیلی متاسفم و به همه ملت ایران و تمام دوستداران موسیقی کلن و مخصوصا موسیقی سنتی تسلیت میگم. خب شجریان فقط یک خواننده نبود، خودش یه ادیب بود. تمام شعرا رو، تمام دیوانشون رو همه حفظ بود، یعنی در کنار خوانندگی یه ادیبم بود و خصوصیتش این که با مردم بود، همیشه با مردم حرکت میکرد، شادیای مردم رو شاد بود، غمهای مردم رو باشون شریک می شد. در تمام مراحلی که مردم ازش گذشتن شجریان با اونا بود. انقلاب که شد باشون خوند، در تا جنگ شد برای جنگ خوند. هم اینجوری بود، چنین شخصیتی بود. و من این حرفی که میخوام بزنم نه اینکه الان باشه که ایشون فوت کردن، حتی در زمان حیاتشون من همیشه میگفتم اگه قرار باشه یک رأی گیری بشه که تو 150 سال اخیر چه خواننده ای و شما بهتر از همه میدونین، من بدون کوچکترین تردید میگفتم شجریان. یعنی تو 150 سال اخیر به نظر من از همه مسلط‌تر تو آواز ایرانی و با احساس‌تر ایشون میخوند.
It's a beautiful perspective in terms of what he meant, what he means to the Iranian people, and what he means, how his voice is bigger than just an ordinary singing voice. Tell me, Arsalan, what, if you can, nazar shakhsi, like, what did he personally mean to you as a musician?
خب من تقریبا آشناییم با آقای شجریان 41 ساله. از قبل از انقلاب بیشتر 42-43 سال که با گروه شیدا و محمد-رضا لطفی و برادرای من که گروه شیدا بود، من از اون موقع با ایشون آشنا بودم، میدیدمشون تو تمرینا، میدیدم تو مهمونیا، میدیدم که باشون آشنا بودم، به خلقیاتشون آشنا بودم، به روحیاتشون آشنا بودم و بسیار آدم گرم، بسیار آدم صمیمی، بسیار بسیار خاکی در اون شخصیت بزرگ ایشون. ولی با ایشون مینشستی صحبت میکردی حس نمیکردی که چنین آدمی بسیار خاکی و خودمونی بودن ایشون.
Can you say there are people in the streets I know now in Iran, but here in Canada, and the people we are speaking to around the world feel unified by this, the death of this maestro. It has brought Iranians together. He has a major influence on Iranians. Can you speak to why he is able to unify us?
خب برای اینکه یک عمر برای مردم خوند و برای همه مردم، به دور از دستجات مختلف، برای همه مردم. گفتم غمهای مردم رو باشون شریک میشد، شادیهای مردم رو باشون شریک میشد، برای همه مردم میخوند و صداش میرفت تو، چجوری بگم، رسوخ میکرد تو روح آدما. و طبیعیه که چنین چیزی میتونه باعث اتحاد بین تمام آدما باشه. به قول شما تو ایران الان مردم ریختن دم بیمارستان و همچنین ممکنه تو اروپا هم چنین چیزی باشه، تو آمریکا چنین چیزی باشه. اینجوری باعث وحدت بین آدما شده.
Arsalan Kamkar, متشکرم. مرسی. Thank you for this today.
خواهش میکنم.
خداحافظ.
قربون شما. خداحافظ.
گر به تو افتادم نظر چهره به
Our next guest on this Roqe special, a tribute to Shajarian, is Golrokh Aminian. She's an Iranian-Canadian trained soprano who started her music education as a child by learning to play the violin. She was a member of the choir and a lead soprano in the Rudaki Hall of Tehran. Golrokh continued her vocal training at the Royal Conservatory of Music after moving to Canada and honed her talents in opera. In 2015, Golrokh co-founded Cultural Exchange 360, a not-for-profit organization designed around bringing people of different cultures together through music and performing arts. And right now, Golrokh Aminian joins us from Toronto, Canada. Hello.
Hello, Jian.
Nice to have you on the program, although I wish it were on for happier reasons. Tell me, I know your life has been steeped in not just Persian music, but even Persian classical music. Tell me how you've been feeling upon hearing the news that Ustad Shajarian has died today.
I'm very honored to have this opportunity to speak about Maestro Shajarian today. When I heard the news, I couldn't stop my tears. And I believe that, in fact, our whole country is mourning. And we not only lost, hands down, the greatest singer of our history, but also a symbol who stood by his people and became their voice. So, yes, you're correct. I am a classical soprano. And all my training has been in classical music. However, he has had a great impact on my musical aspirations and also my musical ear as I grew up with his voice. And that divine voice really that immerses you in beauty and thought and in meanings beyond what really words convey. An interesting story I would like to say.
Sure.
15 years ago, in 2005, when I was going to see Maestro for the first time in concert, some of my non-Persian friends asked me, why am I so excited? And the only way that I could explain was to say, I'm going to see the Pavarotti of Iran. And they got it.
Yes. And, I was asking Babak Amini this question coming from the standpoint of a producer, but you can talk to me as a vocalist. What was it about, or what is it about Mohammad-Reza Shajarian's voice that so captivated people around the world?
Well, it's one aspect for sure is the technical aspect, and the technical aspect is so strong and so profound that it's basically unprecedented, and I very much doubt that those shoes could be filled at all. But also, so the technical aspect is one strong, very, very strong issue, but it's also how you use that technical aspect to bring out the emotion and all of the things, the messages that you want to convey. And also the preservation of the traditional Persian music is another very important aspect, especially in avaz, in songs, in singing, basically. So in our modal music, we have so many very specific melodies called Roqe. And these modes and melodies are basically the backbone of the traditional music. And historically, they've been handed down from teacher to his disciples for many generations. So many of them have been lost over time, and Maestro Shajarian had a special role in preserving and revitalizing some of these endangered melodies and over the past decades, basically.
There's something about this that is fascinating to me. I'll repeat it with a couple of different guests, but he is formerly a classical musician, and yet you wouldn't really. I can't think of an equivalent of a contemporary classical musician in the West who would have the kind of impact on different generations, people who are into different kinds, styles, genres of music that Shajarian has had on Persians not just in Iran, but throughout the diaspora of different ages. You're a classical musician, your brother-in-law's in a rock band. You must have a sense of this. Why has he cut through the generations unlike other classical musicians, perhaps?
That's a very good question. That gets me also thinking, why indeed? I think there is something about classical and traditional music that it basically, it's the backbone of the culture, and that if you're dealing with if we're dealing with a generation, new generation, the old generation, that is the very basic of where we're all connected, from that backbone, from that root. And if somebody is there who understands that root so profoundly and is delivering that message, and that that the music so in such a profound way and a professional way, I think that's where we all get connected, through that root. And he did it in such an amazing way that we all feel that a part of us is going towards that root of that big tree that he creates through his music.
Feels like a really strangely unifying moment for Iranians, people of Iranian descent around the world. I'm sure you're seeing it all over social media. It's almost unprecedented, the kind of outpouring of folks, the universal mourning that we are seeing. Can you speak to that before I let you go? The resonance of this man in life and death to Iranians around the world?
Absolutely. And I think this is another very important aspect of his art, the socio-political aspect of his art. So many believe that art and politics should be separated from each other. But for him, the regime cut off his voice from radio and television. They did not allow him to hold any concerts because he did not bend a knee. He never appeased like so many other artists did. And through this, he was basically the voice of the people. And his performance of Morgh Sahar, the bird of dawn, has turned into a symbol of resistance for the people of Iran.
Golrokh, do you have before I let you go, do you have a personal piece of music or memory that you go to when you and that you went to in your mind when you heard of his passing today?
I actually did. There is this amazing piece that he sings solo, a cappella, with no musical instruments, and it's called Ghulam Chashme An Turkam. I wasn't able to listen to it. I couldn't. I broke out in tears. But that is for me, that is Ustad Shajarian. And if you allow me, I would like to conclude my comments to say that in one of his interviews, he tells us about his views of music. He says that I followed music to provoke people to think. I didn't pursue music to entertain or to feel good. Contemplation was the reason, as it's only through thinking that humans grow and develop. Thank you, Jian.
Thank you so much for this, Golrokh.
My pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
نگارین گلشنش روی سام مشکین سایبان ابرو.
You are listening to our Roqe special, a tribute to Shajarian, episode number 51 of Roqe. Iraj Janati Ataie is our next guest. He is a critically and popularly acclaimed Iranian poet, lyricist, playwright, and theater director. He is best known for his collaborations with Abi, Gugush, Dariush, and his remarkable way with words. He is simply an icon in our global Iranian community. And right now, Iraj Janati Ataie joins us from London, England. Hello, sir.
Hello. How are you?
I'm okay. It's nice to have you on the program, Iraj Jan. Thanks for doing this.
You're most welcome.
I'm going to ask the questions in English. You can answer in Farsi if you wish, whatever's comfortable for you, okay?
Well, obviously, my mother tongue is Persian, so I prefer to speak in Farsi, if you don't mind.
No problem. No problem.
Oh, Farsi.
Iraj, tell me, I guess, first of all, the question I'm asking everybody on this day, how you are feeling upon hearing the sad news that Ustad Shajarian has died.
I mean, obviously, it's sorry, I was talking in English. خبر خاموش شدن هر انسانی، به ویژه کسانی که میشناسی و به ویژه نامدارانی که در زمینه هنر فعالیت میکردند و جان و جهان و جوانیشون رو گذاشته بودن، دیگه فرق نمیکنه. الان هم همونطوره. از شنیدن خبر طبیعی است که اندوه و به نوعی قصه گریبانم رو گرفت.
Can you put into perspective why he was so significant as a musical artist? For those listening outside of Iran who may not have known the importance of Shajarian or encountered him, why is this touching people all over the world so much?
I mean, I don't know. من نمیدونم وقتی میگین که در سراسر جهان کرده بود، من واقعا نمیدونم این آمار و اینا چجوریه، بنابراین نمیتونم راجبش حرف بزنم. راجب هیچ هنرمندی، هیچ انسانی، هیچ رخدادی نمیشه اینو گفت و گفت که قطعیه. اون چی که مسلمه، ایشون بسیار جایگاه ویژه‌ای در یک نوع خوانندگی داشتند و اون موسیقی سنتی فارسی بود و همیشه هم فکر میکنم نامشون بمونه در این زمینه و اینی که مثل هر نوع موسیقی دیگه، هر نوع هنر دیگه، در اقصانقاط جهان هم کسانی باشن که اون نوع کار رو یا اون هنرمند رو دوست داشته باشن یا کاراشون رو دنبال کرده باشن. حتما نشون هم یکی از اونها بوده دیگه و خواهد بود.
Did you ever get to know him?
من شخصا فقط یک بار این شانس رو داشتم که نمایشی داشتم و ایشون هم در کانادا بودن و اومدن و نمایش رو دیدن و بعدم یه نشستی داشتیم در خانه میزبان و در کنار دوست نازنین که هنرپیشه اون نمایش من بود، آقای بهروزی موسیقی، و این آخرین دیدار و خاطره ایست که از ایشون دارم.
Yes, John, before I let you go, you know, there are people in the streets in Iran right now. Maestro Shajarian was not shy about expressing his opposition to the government or his political feelings. A few of our guests have spoken about that. They've called him brave. What is your perspective on what he had to say politically in recent years?
اوکی. این دلیل این که من پذیرفتم که دعوت مهرورزانه شما رو و بیام و شرکت کنم همینه، برای اینکه من به طور کلی با عقاید ایشون، با باورهای ایشون در یک مسیر و یک راه و یک جهت هنرمندانه نبودیم. برای اینکه من باور دارم که هر کسی حق داره هر نظری، هر جهانبینی، هر تشکل سیاسی رو که قبول داره یا باش میپیونده یا هر چیزی رو داشته باشه. اما وقتی که صحبت گزینش میشه، من با ایشون تفاوت بنیادی داشتم، حتی از وقتی که بسیار جوان ساله بودم و در ایران بودم تا وقتی که دیدم ایشون رو اینجا و اون چیزی که ازشون میشنیدم از ترانه هاشون و از صرفاشون و اون چیزی که راجع بهشون. ولی وقتی که چند وقت پیش شنیدم که در خیابونها همراه با معترضین و اونهایی که سرنگونی خواهان جمهوری اسلامی هستن، بعضی هم اینا رو میگن، شرکت کرده بودن، حضور داشتن و خیلی رشیدانه گفته بودن، فریاد کشیده بودن مرگ بر دیکتاتور.
Yes.
و این ستایش برانگیز بود برای من که با اون حال و در اون سن و سال ایشون هم صدای با اکثریت مطلق یک جامعه که خواهان سرنگونی نظامی سیاه هستند هم صدایی بکنه. برای من این بهترین ترانه ای بود که ایشون خونده.
Iraj Janati Ataie, I hope you will come back and spend a full show with us to talk about your remarkable life and career.
Okay, I hope so. I hope that I survive and we can meet.
Of course. We will look forward to it. Merci که وقتی که دادین به ما امروز. Thank you so much for your time and thank you for your words.
Thank you very much and take very good care of your very good self.
Merci. خداحافظ.
تفنگت را زمین بگذار، تفنگت را زمین بگذار، که من بیزارم از دیدار این خونبار ناهنجار. تفنگ دست تو یعنی زبان آتش و آهن. من اما پیش این
You're listening to our Roqe special, a tribute to Mohammad-Reza Shajarian on the day of his passing. Our next guest is the one and only Erfan Paidar. He is a rapper, a songwriter, a producer, a label owner. He's one of the pioneers of Persian hip-hop music. His latest album is called Angizeh. And right now, Erfan joins us from Los Angeles today. Hello, sir.
Hi, Jian. Good to hear from you.
Good to talk to you. I'm okay. Tell me, you're known as the hip hop guy, but you're also something of a musicologist yourself, especially when it comes to Persian music. Tell me the reaction you had upon hearing the news that Maestro Shajarian had died.
Well, I was telling your friend, our hours are different, pretty much opposite of Iran's. So every morning I wake up with some kind of bad news from Iran. But this morning it was a bit more emotional and personal because growing up, Shajarian was a really big deal in my house, as I'm sure it was in a lot of different households and families. But my parents pretty much, no disrespect to any musician, but Ebi, Daryush, those people, they didn't consider them artists. They were just really to Sunnati and pretty much only Shajarian, so growing up, I always heard that in my household on the trips to Shomal in the car, family gatherings at the end of the night. So it was very sad hearing it. It just took me back to all the memories that I have from my childhood with his voice in the background.
A lot of people are saying that. They're using that, like the voice of Iran, the voice that defined a nation. Do you have a sense from your perspective of what made him so vital and significant, first of all, as a musical artist?
To be honest, I growing up, I didn't understand. Like when I was a kid and I listened to, let's say, Shajarian and other Sunnati artists, to me, they all seemed, I couldn't tell the difference until later on when I grew up and I learned more about sound. Some things are natural. I don't think it's just about practicing more or anything like that, but just like he had this thing in his voice that affects overall, has a stronger effect on you than other singers, and that could go across different genres. And I think him picking, and this is also stuff that I learned more about as I learned more about Sunnati, the melodies, because someone mixed the song, they picked the poems that he used were always like on point, very special, and people connected with him. So I think that's a huge part, and also the melodies that he put together with the music that came across. So it's not just his singing and his powerful voice, but I think he had a great talent in picking basically the poems and then the melodies that he used.
His influence and his importance to Iranians seems to go way beyond simply being a singer or a musician. Do you have a sense of this?
I do, especially in the latter years when he stood up for his music and his image, and he didn't let the government kind of take advantage and use his music for their benefit. And they kind of they stopped using his song Rabbana was one of the most important, influential songs that always during Ramadan, we always heard it, like since we were children growing up. So I think he made a great stand there, which was, and also with Morghe Sahar, songs like that. If you know the history of Morghe Sahar, the poet, I believe it's Muhammad Malik Shu'ara Bahar, he wrote it in prison, that song, and it's about prison, when he was in prison during Reza Shah's time. And when he sang that during the Islamic Republic time, I think it had anywhere you go, as soon as you sing Morghe Sahar, everybody in the room starts singing it. Yes. I mean, that's why he's the king of all singers, like in a way, like, or musicians or artists, in my opinion.
You know, before I let you go, I mean, I know that when last time we talked, at least on the show, we talked about you being some kind of ambassador in some way for a younger generation of Iranians, especially those in the diaspora. If you open your social media today, which I'm sure you've done, it is just wall to wall Shajarian. Like, it is clear that this is not just important to Iranians in Iran and in the diaspora, but it almost feels like a unifying moment. Abbas Milani led off the show talking about this being epochal, like it's got this like feeling like this event, this man, and then this event, his death, has turned us into this global collective. We'll see how long that lasts. But can you reflect on that at all?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's the one guy, you just made me think about this, but there are people who probably maybe haven't heard any of his music before, or not much of it, and they know he's a GOAT. I mean, that's power. That's something for people to know he's the greatest of all time, or the most influential, best singer in Iran, without knowing much about his music. It's something that it's known. You know what I mean? And it's to the point that I love his music. There's a few of his songs that I've listened to so many times and have an emotional connection to. And I've thought about sampling these songs and making a song, and I'm like, no, fuck, man, like, this is scary. I don't want to, like, people might get upset. You know, he's on that level that I'm scared to sample the songs.
Don't mess with the Shajarian.
Yeah. Exactly. In due time.
It's always good to talk to you, and I thank you for taking this moment to talk about even how, as a hip hop artist, this affects you, and this is a moment for you as an Iranian in the diaspora, like it is for many of us.
Thank you, Jian. Nice talking to you.
Hope to talk to you again soon, bro. Bye bye.
You too. Take good care.
You're listening to a Roqe special, a tribute to Shajarian, our episode number 51. And we're going to go to Austria for our next guest, Hooman Khalatbari. He is a world-renowned Iranian-Austrian music director, choir and orchestra conductor, and pianist. He was the principal pianist of the Tehran Symphony Orchestra and the assistant conductor of Tehran Symphony Choir and Tehran Youth Philharmonic Orchestra. Hooman moved to Austria in 1996. Since then, Hooman Khalatbari has performed as a conductor, soloist, chamber musician, accompanist, and coordinator in performances all around the world. And right now, Hooman Khalatbari joins us from Graz, Austria. Hello, sir.
سلام منم از شهر گراز اتریش داشته باشین. بسیار خوشحالم که صداتون رو میشنوم. بفرمایید، من در خدمتتونم.
منم خوشحالم. Although I'm sad that we're doing this on a day of sad news. Of course, we'd love to have you on the program anytime. Hooman, tell me how you are feeling upon hearing the news that Ustad Shajarian has died.
خب مطمئناً که خبر خوبی نبوده و من حقیقتش از روزی که مجدداً ایشون رو به بیمارستان بردم و خبردار هستم از طریق دوستان در ایران، خب واقعا دلنگران و چشم به این گوشی موبایل و تلفن داشتم و حقیقتا دل تو دلم نبود، ولی خب میدونیم یک چیزی رو واقعا باید قبول کرد که به هر حال این خبر دیر یا زود به متاسفانه، البته واقعا متاسفانه، به گوش ما میباید میرسید و استاد سالیان ساله که با این بیماری داشتن دست و پنجه نرم میکردن. من یادم سال 1195 عید 1195 ایشون اوفیسیل و رسما در حقیقت با فیلمی که از خودشون گذاشتن با موهای نازنینشون رو کوتاه کرده بودن که بله من بیماری سرطان دارم و سال هاست، بیش از 10-15 ساله و خب این شوک خیلی بزرگی بود. میدونین سال 1195 عید 1195 حقیقتا شوک بزرگی بود، ولی خب آدم همیشه سعی میکنه خودش رو یه جورایی راضی کنه، هی به قولی معروف میگن گول بزنه، راضی کنه، آرزو میکنه، امید داره، همه چیزای طبیعی که هر کسی داره. و خب حقیقتا امروز که من این خبر رو شنیدم، خب از سمتی واقعا ناراحت شدم، حقیقتا ناراحت شدم. انگار یه چیزی خالی میشه تو دل آدم و خب آدم میمونه که خب الان چی؟ از سمت دیگه من ایشون رو واقعا چندین و چند بار از نزدیک هم دیده بودم. یک انسان بسیار قدرتمند، پر انرژی و خیلی روپا، سفت، خیلی قرص و خب طبیعتا این 4-5 سال بیماری، حال تازه قبلش هم ما که خبر نداشتیم، میدونم که بهشون سخت گذشت، میدونم که خیلی بهشون سخت گذشته. پزشکای بسیاری زحمت کشیدن، پرستارای بسیاری، بچه هاشون، نوه ها، همه و من میدونم که حقیقتا خودشون هم شاید داشتن اذیت میشدن، میدونی. و اینه که از یک سمتی هم من فکر میکنم که شاید خداوند دوست داشته که ایشون دیگه بیشتر از این ناراحتی نکشن، درد نکشن، سختی نکشن. میدونی اینها هم باید آدم دو طرف یه ترازو بذاره، میدونی، هم قسمت این ور داره هم قسمت اون ور. ولی خب آدم ناراحت دیگه.
وقتی که میگی ناراحت شدین, when you say you're upset, tell me about as an acclaimed classical musician yourself. First of all, what did Shajarian mean to you musically?
ببینین آقای شجریان در این که یک شاید آدم ببینین اینجوری بگم، آواز در موسیقی ایران چیز خیلی مهمیه. چرا؟ به خاطر اینکه شعر در هنر ایران چیز خیلی مهمیه، یک وزنه خیلی مهمیه، خیلی ارزش داره و بنابراین آواز ایرانی هم بر روی شعر کلاسیک ایرانی، حالا اواخر مدرن هم هست، ولی به هر حال روی شعر کلاسیک ایرانی ظهور داره و وزنه‌ای هستش. خب خیلی برای ما ایرانی‌ها آواز ایرانی و آواز موسیقی سنتی ارزش داره. صدای آقای شجریان یکی از به نظر من الماس ها و یکی از جواهرات این صندوقچه جواهرات. ما یه صندوقچه جواهرات داریم که صدای شجریان یک نگین خیلی درشت و براق و به چشم بیا. ما خواننده های خوب دیگه هم داشتیم، درش هیچ شکی نیست. هر نگینی هم یک ارزشی داره، میدونین. الماس یه جور خوبه، بریلیان یه جور خوبه، یاقوت یه جور خوبه، عقیق یه جور خوبه. آقای شجریان صدای بسیار ناب، خیلی باز، عرض شود خدمت شما اگه بخوایم تقسیم بندی کنیم تنور در حقیقت بودند و این قلط و این تمبر صدای ایشون بسیار بسیار منحصر به فرد بود در رنج خودشون. دارم میگم ما جواهرات زیادی داریم در موسیقی ایرانی یا داشتیم و ایشون هم برای خودش وزنه خیلی بزرگ و جواهر خیلی خیلی شاخصی بوده.
That is a beautiful and a wonderful answer in terms of his musical impact, his musical abilities, and his musical influence. Before I let you go, let me ask you what you think he meant socially and culturally and politically. A few people have made the point that this is really, he was able to unify Iranians, and that's not easy to ببین چرا میتونست این کارو بکنه. Why was Ustad Shajarian such and why is he in his death such an important figure in being able to unify us?
یه چیز جالب بهتون بگم. آقای شجریان همیشه اصرار داشتن که من آدم سیاسی نیستم. فهمیدین؟ همیشه گفته. ولی آثارش و حضورش اجتماعی سیاسی بوده. این خیلی مهمه. یعنی چون با مردم بوده همیشه، چون پشت مردم بوده، چون خودش رو از مردم همیشه حساب میکرده، طبیعتاً هم با هر اتفاقی که برای مردم و جامعه مردم و در حقیقت همون اجتماع میافتاده خودش رو تاثیرپذیر حس میکرده. یعنی میدونسته که آقا روی اون هم تاثیر میگذاره. میدونین چی میخوام بگم؟ بنابراین وقتی که با مردمش بوده، مردم هم دوستش داشتن. این خیلیه. و به علاوه این که مردم قبول کردن، البته حالا یک جاهایی یک نکات مثبت و منفی حالا بالاخره آدم میتونه در زندگی هر کسی پیدا کنه. من همیشه مثال میزنم آقا گل بی عیب خداست. درست شد. ولی آدم لیست میتونه بکنه که چقدر مثبت داشته چقدر منفی داشته. و آقای شجریان در عرصه هنرش سعی کرده که همیشه همراه مردم باشه، صدای مردم باشه، حتی حرکت هایی بکنه که برای مردم باشه. شما حتما میدونی یه زمانی زلزله رودبار شد، شروع کرد به کنسرت دادن، پول جمع کردن برای زلزله رودبار. 2 مرتبه زلزله بم اومد، 2 مرتبه کنسرت رو جمع کرد، پول جمع کرد فلان بسیار برای ساختن باغ بم، کنسرت بم و و و و و داستان جریانات 88 که دیگه آخرین و شاخصترینش بود که برگشت گفت من صدای همون خس و خاشاک هستم. میدونین اینا به هر حال از حضور ذهن جامعه که پاک نمیشه، که جامعه اینا رو میبینه، جامعه اینا رو حس میکنه و جامعه در حقیقت پاس هم میداره. شما الان نگاه کنید ببینید تو خیابونای تهران چه خبره. همین الان جلوی بیمارستان جمع رو بستن، مردم همه اونجا نمیذارن بشه. فردا مراسم ایشون در توس هستش برای اینکه یک مقبره اونجا مدت هاست ساختن آماده است. این حرفا، این مقبره در کنار مزار فردوسی و همینطور اخوان ثالث اونجا هستش. فردا اونجا هم مطمئنا شلوغ خواهد شد. البته با این جریانات کرونا مطمئن امیدوارم که نباشه متاسفانه، ولی خب راهی نیست، پروتکل های در حقیقت اجتماعی رو رعایت کردن. ولی خب مردم دوست دارن، مردم براش احترام قائلن، برای اینکه از خودشون دونستنش، برای اینکه همیشه حس کردن آقا یه کسی هست که درد و رنج و ناراحتی مردم رو با صداش، با اشعارش و با موسیقیش به جهان فریاد بزنه. خب چی از این بهتر؟ چی از این بهتر؟
Hooman Khalatbari, I so appreciate your words. I thank you for your time, and I hope we speak again soon. Merci.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you, dear. It was really, really joyful for me too.
Khodafez.
خداحافظ شما. خداحافظ.
می آمده رخسار برافروخته بود،
You are listening to our Roqe special, a tribute to Ustad Shajarian. Our next guest is Hamid Nikpay, an Iranian-American vocalist, multi-instrumentalist, and songwriter. He is, of course, known for his seductive fusion sound, his mesmerizing live presence, and his golden voice. He has developed a global audience for his unique performances. And right now, Hamid Nikpay joins us from Los Angeles, California today. Hello, sir.
Hello, how are you, Jian?
It's always nice to hear your voice. Obviously, this is a not as happy an occasion. I can only imagine, based on the music that you make, that Ustad Shajarian has had an effect on your life. Tell me, Hamid, first off, how you reacted, how you've been feeling hearing the news that Shajarian has died today.
Well, Jian, the thing is, all of us, we knew that Ustad Shajarian is not well for a long time. But until the day, like today, it's a reality and we have to accept that his soul is present, but his body is gone. But at the same time, it's not easy for us to accept that. The brilliant treasure of our culture, music culture, a symbol of the true art of the ancient Persian ancient music, art, culture, it's gone. He was 100% loyal to the roots of music, to the roots of culture. He was the symbol of being a free person when he became as a icon, when he was talking on the university, on the television, any places. He didn't care about the politics or anything.
Yes.
He was a free man. He was a free thought. He was a free artist. But besides that, I think he was the most influential person in our music. Even in my generation, even me, even the people like me, that they are trying to change the form of the traditional music to the modern version. But we all knew without the people like him, without him, we wouldn't able to do this kind of music.
Tell me about what he meant, because I know for people who don't know your story, I mean, you're this fusion artist, you're this rock artist, you're this rock star, but you actually began, as you've told us, starting. You learned your chops playing classical music and being interested in classical music in Iran. Tell me about your personal introduction to Shajarian and what he meant to you, what he has meant to you over the years musically.
Thanks for asking this. Basically, I grew up with my mother. My mother was 100% very extremist on listening to the traditional music. She didn't like any type of music, only classical of any culture, any country. I don't say it's good or bad, but I want to tell you and give you some example of the ambience of our home. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So I grew up with traditional music. I studied the traditional Radif music. For many long time, I didn't listen to the pop music or another genre, especially under the age of 15. So I grew up with his voice. He was my rock star. You know what I mean? He was a person. He was the inspiration, and he was the level when we wanted to say, okay, this music is good or bad. Always we say, no, he's not good. I don't say he's right, but in that age, when he was a source of to be perfect, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that he's in my mind, and I had a chance. I was. Since 2005, when I moved to United States, I was so lucky and I was honored to at least each year I had a visit. We had a mutual friend. As a student, I was very humble and I had a very, I don't know how to say that. I I was very lucky, man, to was around him during when he was in United States at Stanford and in our town. We were talking, and it's funny. He listened to my work. With I didn't know that when mutual friend played my music, and he wanted to stop the song. His name is Ali Nasiri, and he listened to that, and then he said, "Please tell this guy to come. I want to talk to him." He gave me a lots of advices. He supported me. He told me what to do to be good in the future, and so that's a level he means in my career.
You know, we've heard that despite the fact that he was this global icon, named by NPR, one of the greatest voices ever in the world, all of that he was actually quite humble in person, very accessible in person. Was that your experience with him?
Yes and no. He was very humble, kind, very humble and kind. But I don't know the perfect word for that.
فارسی بگو.
اوراش یعنی ابهتش, always he was ustad. Even he was humble. Even he give you the permission to be relaxed and humble around him, but it was not possible. That's a personality. همیشه یک نگرانی بود چون he was real, truly استاد. Not خیلی اکت میکنن که استادن، ولی he was a true استاد و برای من خیلی افتخار بود جیان. یعنی بخصوصا برای من که از ایران اومده بودم و بلافاصله فرض کنید که این فرصت رو داشتم که ببینمشون همراه استاد درخشانی. And actually I saw a documentary on BBC. I was almost crying because the footage, they were almost all over the places I was with them during the San Francisco tour. And it made me sad how life goes on, که اگه میدونستی 1000 برابر بیشتر enjoy میکردی و یاد میگرفتی و لذت میبری. One thing about him I never forget. Do I have time to tell you?
Of course, go ahead. Yeah.
The thing is, we were at the party in Sacramento, and Ustad Rakhshani, his the last music director for his tours, invited me, and Ustad Shajarian told me, like, Hamid, یه چیزی بخون برام.
Sing something for us. Yeah.
Yeah, and منم گفتم که من آخه چه کار باید بکنم آخه it's a bad situation. It's not a cool situation actually. I said, no, ma'am, I tell you to sing something for us. And I knew that که آقای درخشانی هم بی تاثیر نبود. And he said, like, also I talked about Hamid because since 2003 we collaborated something, the classical together, and I want him to sing something for you. خلاص آقا ما خوندیم. I didn't change my style. I sang whatever.
Had you ever sung in front of Shajarian before?
No, dude. It's an honor. It's not a chance if you ask.
But it would be terrifying. Was it scary?
Yeah. به خاطر اینکه خیلی اصلا آرزو دارن، مثلا اونایی که خیلی کامیتد هستن تو ترادیشنال که بخونن. آقا ما هم خوندیم. I did whatever I did و سبک خودم و اینا و یه فکر مونی چیکار کرد، یه 5 second to 10 second he didn't say anything. No one didn't say anything. Nobody said anything. And
you mean after you finished?
آره یعنی اصلا دیگه همه تقریبا سکته داشتیم میکردیم و اینا. بعد گفتش که خیلی با احساس بود، دوست داشتم. بعد حالا اینو داشته باش، اینو گفت اولین کامنت هم اینه که خب خوبه که ادای منو در نمیاری. به خاطر اینکه کسایی که تو موزیک هم میدونن که خیلی ها هستن که that's not bad.
Yeah, you're not just copying me, he said.
Copying, ولی خب صدا سازیشون هم اینه ایشونه. Genre is a different story. Some people they exactly copy his voice. You know what I mean?
Right.
بعد که گذاشت گفت can you come گفت یه لحظه میتونی بیای اون اتاق. If you ask me about his personality, this is the part.
Okay.
He gave me the advice. but not front of the others.
Wow. So he ends up giving you some pointers in the other room.
He didn't correct me in front of the others. The others were Muhammad, it was Ustad Rakhshani, he was Humayun Shajarian, his son. It was the musician band Hossein Rezainia. He knew that as a person, I was active, even I was young, I was a professional musician. He didn't want to put me down. Right. He didn't want to act like you are nobody and I'm just it. Even he اگرم میکرد, it was right. He could do that. اصلا هزاران نفر هستن که اگر ازشون ایراد بگیری اصلا دوست دارن که بگن آقا مثلا ما خوندیم جلوی. و اونجا بود که if you ask me what is the personality, this is the personality. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
He didn't
I
correct
am
me.
so grateful that you told that story, because that says so much. Yeah, what did he actually what before I let you go, what was the advice? What did he tell you?
The advice is, how old are you? And I said 27. He said, okay, you don't have that much time. You have to correct the technique that called tahrir, cha. And he said, if you want to sing the traditional, if you don't want to sing the traditional, that's a different story. If you want to sing the traditional, you have to work on your tahrir. Like this one, okay? And he says, you have to do this and you have to do that. I sing something, repeat after me. And he did. And said, okay, this one is right, this one no. This one start from this. Work on the speed, work on the spaces. And like this. You don't have time. Under the age 30, you have to fix it. That was one. And he gave me the feedback of the performance I did. And he said, I like the performance. It was soulful. It was you. It was not copy. But from that part, it was a contrast. The contrast was too much in that part. Like immediately you change you sing in the low octave. And then immediately you jump to the high octave. I don't say it's bad, but for example, put something on the process, like a passage on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he gave me those stuff, but basically he supported me. He told me that I approve this way because you want to be you. If you wanted to be me, I won't say this. If you wanted to be a standard traditional singer, I wouldn't give you this advice as I give you. You know what I mean?
You know what the most significant part of that story is?
In my opinion, is the part he didn't say anything in front of the other people.
Well, of course. No, the other significant part, the takeaway from it is that this was years ago, but you remember exactly what he said. It was so important to you that you got this advice from the Ustad Shajarian. Hamid,
and and just 1 second, I want to tell you, this is the first time ever I mentioned this story to anybody. I swear to God. This is the first time ever, because I knew some people, they were a true and great student of him. They did take advantage of this. Ustad Shajarian said this about us. Actually, they had approval behind him. Like, استاد شجریان به ما گفته که تو اینی. استاد شجریان گفته من میترسیدم از این لحظه. یعنی دلم نمیخواست که هیچ وقت به گوشش برسه که حامد جایی نشسته و گفته استاد شجریان به من گفته
exploiting your relationship with him.
و اینو I swear to my late dad, I tell you, I never ever, even at the party, I didn't mention this. Only to my mom and maybe to one of my close friends. حتی افسانه همسر من مطمئنم اینو براش تعریف نکردم. به خاطر اینکه میخواستم I wanted to be real. I wanted to enjoy the 100% of the meaning of that words. I didn't want to be distracted by the feeling of to be just a show off. You know what I mean?
I got you, man. I got you. And I'm honored that you told us. And I'm honored that you shared something that gives us just a little bit more insight into this icon that we've lost. Hamid, it is truly always a joy to talk to you. Even in a sad occasion, you have a way of bringing some wisdom and some warmth to the way you explain what you're feeling. Thank you for doing this, and I desperately hope I get to see you soon, brother.
Same here. Thanks for always contacting me, and it's my honor to be part of your amazing shows.
Thank you, brother. Talk to you soon. Merci.
Sure, brother.
Khuda.
ما دل شدگان خسرو شیرین پراییم ما کشته آن مهرخ خورشید کلاییم ما از دو جهان غیر تو ای عشق نخواهیم.
You are listening to our Roqe special, a tribute to Shajarian. Remember, for all things Roqe, you can go to the hub of our show, our website, roqemedia.com, roqemedia.com. Our next guest is Fariba Davoodi. She is an Iranian-Canadian traditional music singer and master and the founder of the Avaya Mehr Art and Cultural School. Among her mentors in learning vocal technique was, in fact, Maestro Mohammad-Reza Shajarian. Fariba moved to Canada in 2010 and has performed in live concerts on various stages around the country and the world since then. But now, right now, Fariba Davoodi joins me from Toronto today. Hello, Fariba Jan.
Hello, Jian Jan. How are you?
Thank you for doing this. I know it's you were a student of Ustad Shajarian, and this is a difficult day for you. First of all, as I've been asking everybody, tell me how you are feeling and how you felt upon hearing the news that Maestro Shajarian has died.
My feeling is not good because he's not for my teacher. He's my father, he's my friend, he's my brother, and I'm 20 years. I was Mr. Shajarian student in Iran, and when I came in here, I went in my home country and I continue my class and online class, and very bad news. And 4 years he was very bad sick. He was cancer, and I know, and I'm very sad, but this news is very bad news for more Iranian people. I know, but it's a bad news, not for me.
You know, I want to ask you about what he was like personally, since you spent so much time with him. But let me ask you first, as a renowned traditional music singer yourself, what did he mean to you musically? What did you learn from him musically? How important was he musically to you?
Musically, من ردیف آوازی رو، بداهه خونی رو، شعر گذاشتن و ترانه‌های قدیم و جدید و بعد اینکه من خودم طراحی آواز می‌کردم پیش ایشون، یعنی طراحی می‌کردم و ایشون اشکالای منو می‌گرفتن و سینه به سینه، face to face، سینه به سینه من
You weren't just a shagird, you're a student, you were a teacher yourself. What is it about Shajarian that makes him such a significant musical artist? What was it that he did that was so magical?
آقای شجریان تو دلش صدای بنان رو داشته، صدای زلی رو داشته، طاهرزاده رو داشته، صدای ادیب رو داشته، تاج رو داشته، همه اینها رو تو دلش بوده و میتونسته اینا رو خودش یاد گرفته بوده و من اینا رو همه رو از اون یاد گرفتم، همه رو از اون آموختم و بعد خودم هم دنبال آوازهای قدیم دیگه رفتم، یعنی با توصیه ایشون رفتم و این فقط آواز به من یاد نداد، مولانا رو به من شناسوند، حافظ و سعدی رو شناسوند و شعر نو رو به من یاد داد. همه اینا، طراحی آواز، من ملودی سازی میکنم، زیر نظر ایشون من ملودی سازی رو هم یاد گرفتم.
وقتی که میگین که this man was not just your teacher, but he was like your father, مثل پدرتون بود، مثل برادرتون بود. can you tell us a bit about him as a person? I mean, for some of us, he's just this music icon that we've always known the name of, and we've known that he was important and he was influential. Personally, what can you tell us about him?
بله ببین وقتی میگی شاگرد یک انسان هستی، وقتی میگی که استودنت یه آدم هستی، باید همه جوره از اون آدم یاد بگیری. خب من با این آدم زندگی سالها میرفتم هشتگرد، یعنی من تنها خانمی بودم که آژانس میگرفتم، میرفتم آژانس 8 ساعت 9 ساعت دم در باغ بود، من آوازی میتونم غذا درست میکرد، ما هم غذا درست میکردیم، کشاورزی میکرد، من کشاورزی یاد گرفتم، گلارایی، پرورش گل و درد دل میکرد، نصیحت میکرد. حتی اون دوره‌ای که مریض شده بود به من میگه بابا جون تو باید از من مراقبت کنی. گفتم بابا جون حتما، من اصلا پاتونو میمالم، دستتونو میمالم. و من خودم وقتی مریض شدم، خب خیلی منم یه بیماری سخت گرفتم، ولی از ایشون یاد گرفتم که مبارزه کنی. خیلی استرانگ بود، خیلی همه چی رو سخت نمیگرفت، میدونین، یعنی خیلی خیلی خوب بود. واسه همینه که من خیلی اینجور چیزا رو از ایشون، فقط آواز یاد نگرفتم. ژیان جان، شاگردی کردن این نیست که بری یه عکس بگیری توی مهمونی باشی. شاگردی اینه که شبانه روز بخوای با یه استادی بلنشی، بشینی، بری بیای، هفته 7 روز. من اول شاگرد همه شاگرداش بودم، از هر کدوم از شاگرداش یه چیزی یاد گرفتم و شاگرد لطفی بودم، شاگرد علیزاده بودم، شاگرد کلهور بودم. ولی وقتی به خودش رسیدم دیدم اصلا یه دایره المعارف زنده است، یعنی اصلا این هیچی کم نداره، میدونین. ولی خب من از نظر اون نوع معرفتی که نگاه میکنم، مثلا فریدون مشیری بر ایشون تسلط، یعنی چیز داشت و ایشون خیلی مثلا اونو خیلی دوست داشت که مثل اون مهربون باشه، دوست داشت مثل اون. اینجوری من شاگردی کردم، میدونی. و الان شاید باورتون نشه 3 شبه که من همش دعا میکنم که خدایا اینقدر اینو نبرن بیارن، اینو یا نجاتش بده، معجزه کن، یا واقعا بره، برای اینکه جسمش خلاص شه. چون شجریان زنده است، شجریان اسمش هست، شعرش هست، همه جا خاطرش هست، نواراش هست، کنسرتاش هست، میدونین. ولی این واقعا یه جوریه که خیلی منو اذیت میداد که ایشون خب نمیتونه حرکت کنه. واقعا الان 3 سال بود نه حرکتی داد. اینش سخته.
Maybe before I let you go, do you have, when you heard the news today, you've been saying it the last 3 days, you've been praying that there's some sort of resolution to this dire situation he was in with his cancer. When he died, and when you heard the news, is there a particular place where your mind went? Do you have a particular memory that is fondest of him that you want to share with us?
یه روز خواب دیدم که دنبالم میگرده و خیلی جالب بود که بهش زنگ زدم، گفت کجایی، چرا موبایل نداری، چرا نیستی؟ گفتم استاد شما، من 2 جام، یا تو خونه‌ام یا توی محل کارمم، چی کارم داری؟ گفت آره عموی کتی مریض خانومشو، ما در به در دنبال پزشک میگم. من گفتم فریبا میتونه. خیلی برام جالب بود. خب روز تعطیلی عید من این خوابو دیده بودم، این داره دنبال من میگرده. خب رفتیم عموی کتی خانومم بردیم بیمارستان و دکتر ناظم سلامت نگهش داشت. بعد به من برگشت گفت میدونی اسم تو رو باید چی بذارم؟ فریبا داوودی مساوی قنبر وفادار مساوی نفس محمد-رضا. یعنی برای من نمیخوام بگم چی، ولی میدونین یعنی خیلی خیلی برای من دردآور بود. و اینکه الان نمیتونم، من بلیط هم خریده بودم و این کرونا نزدیک، من همون ژانویه که فهمیدم حال نداره بلیط گرفتم ولی نتونستیم، پروازا کنسل شد. و الان میبینم که خب تو این دوران کرونا اون جورم که باید نمیتونن، اون کاری که باید براش انجام بدن نمیشه. اینم حتما خواست خداست، واقعا من نمیدونم. و امیدوارم که هیچ کسی غم نبینه و نظیر شجریان نمیدونم تا 100 سال دیگه آیا خواهد اومد. خیلی ها میخوان مثل اون بخونن، خیلی ها میخوان حتی ادای صداشو در بیارن، ولی آیا مثل شجریان تاثیر خواهند گذاشت؟ یعنی از بچه 4 ساله تا آدم های 90 ساله 100 ساله آیا چند نسل دارن باش؟ و امیدوارم که روحش پشت پناه هممون باشه.
This is really hard for you.
Yes, but today I'm singing for Mohammad-Reza, and I can sing for you.
You want to sing something?
Yes.
We would love it if you sing something.
هر شبم ناله زاریست که گفتن نتوان، ناله از دوری یاریست که گفتن نتوان، بی مه روی تو ای کوکب تابنده مرا، روز روشن شب تاریست که گفتن نتوان، روز روشن شب تاریست که گفتن نتوان، روز روشن شب تاریست که گفتن نتوان، دل جان آی وای.
مرسی.
مرسی از شما. ببخشید که نتونستم بقیهش انگلیسی بگم، این دنبال کلمات
میگم. It's okay. Thank you so much. مرسی که وقتتون رو دادین، مرسی که دلتون رو دادین به ما and that you gave us a little insight into this great man.
مرسی عزیز دل، شما خیلی برای ما عزیزین. مرسی از شما که وقت گذاشتین، مرسی که بنده رو تو این شرایط قابل تونستین. متشکرم.
Hope to see you soon. خداحافظ.
Thank you ماما. بابای ما دیر.
جان جان دوش کجا بودی، جان جان دوش کجا بودی، می غلطم در دل ما بودی.
This is our Roqe special, a tribute to Shajarian. I'm Jian Ghomeshi. We are going to go to Tehran, Iran, for our next guest, Amir Koushkani. He's an ethnomusicologist, a composer, performer, and instructor of traditional Persian stringed instruments, tar and setar. Dr. Koushkani holds a master's degree in Western musical composition and received a PhD in ethnomusicology at York University with a dissertation in the history and theory of Iranian music transcription. Amir recently published a 2-volume study on Persian avaz in collaboration with Master Mohammad-Reza Shajarian and Professor Rob Sims. And right now, Amir Koushkani joins us from Tehran, Iran. Hello, Amir Jan.
Hello. How are you doing?
Well, thank you for doing this. I'm sorry it's under these circumstances. I really appreciate you joining us on short notice. I know you're in Tehran. First things first, tell me how you are feeling upon hearing the news that Maestro Shajarian has died.
Hello to all your audience. And it was very shocking because through last couple of days, this news has been came to the media, and then we actually canceled, and gradually, finally, Hooman, his son, posted 2-3 hours ago, and many people were hoping that this was not right again. Although people were so upset about this wrong news about Mr. Shajarian himself, but made everybody sad, and I can feel it everywhere. And I had a chance to know Mr. Shajarian through last 25 years, and especially through writing this book with him and his ideas with Dr. Rob Sims. And yes, it was very shocking. And what I can just say, I was just writing a note for a friend of mine. I was with Mr. Shajarian, and I think many musicians, Iranian musicians, Persian classical, I should rephrase, they actually live with Mr. Shajarian in his work. He was very important. He was the sound of Iran in many ways, sound of many for musicians in relation to music. He was master, great master, and for people, I know many Iranian people, even though some of them, they're not fan of Persian classical music, they still listen to Shajarian all the time.
Let me ask you. I know I can't keep you too long, and I'm going to ask you a question that I suspect I'm asking everybody on this special. But his effect, his impact on the Iranian community, both in Iran and those of us in the diaspora, is so significant. Somebody referred to it earlier today as godlike. As someone who is an ethnomusicologist, as someone who's studied the different kinds of music and the impact of music, and as someone who knew him personally, what do you think was the magic that made him, that has made him the soul of a nation, that has made him so godlike, as was said earlier?
My heart wants to say this, and I hope I can exactly transfer my feeling and my mind about Mr. Shajarian. Shajarian was a very, very extraordinary person. He was empty. He could transfer the message through himself. So it doesn't matter what kind of message was that. So even when we talked to him, gradually you understood Mr. Shajarian can extremely affect you with your own idea. I mean, it's very difficult to explain, and then also Shajarian can be analyzed through his art and music, but as a person, he was a very unique person. He could explain everything better than anybody, and even in 2 minutes, you explain something for him. He observed your ideas, and then the reflection was amazing. Seems like he's connected to something that you cannot really analyze and understand with any form of music analysis. So I had the privilege to talk to him for a long time. So I had about 40 hours conversation with him for our book. And all I can say, Shajarian was a turning point for Persian classical music. And also his voice always was there in my life, and I'm sure for many people's life, and it's going to be it's going to be there too for future. And I think Mr. Shajarian is a character people won't forget. And it's like Hafiz, you never say, and many people consider him like Ustad Shajarian, Master Shajarian, and Shajarian was Shajarian, it's an icon. So when you say Shajarian, for most of Iranians, the next effect is going to be voice, sound. Something comes from different place. You can learn from it. You can enjoy. You can understand. You can feel. So you can be in touch with yourself. So some of these poetry, actually, many people read many of these poetry in the book. But the way Shajarian transformed this to music, it's understandable, especially for last 20 years, Shajarian's word painting, and occasionally he used occasions. He used poem for different occasions, and he was master of that.
Amir, before I let you go, if your heart could speak, just tell me emotionally how you are right now.
To be honest with you, I don't believe Mr. Shajarian is gone. So I'm still in denial. But I'm sure gradually, I don't know what's going to happen for tomorrow, but at this moment, I don't believe it. Because Mr. Shajarian was part of my life for most of my life. As a musician, as a music listener and lover, and also as a person who plays music the last 40 years. And also, I had the chance to bring some of his thoughts for English audience. And I think Mr. Shajarian is still, I have to say, is these people such as Shajarian, who never have died and would never go away from people's minds. And his voice, he has like more than 300 hours. He brought music to Iranians home, which was not like this before. And I'm sure your programs don't have that much time, but I could go in detail why. But Mr. Shajarian's voice going to be alive for me. And my feeling, to be honest, I'm in denial right now.
Amir Koushkani, I hope you stay safe in Tehran. I thank you for this time, and I mourn with you. I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you so much, and it is an honor to be part of your program. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
زدست محبوب ندانم چون کنم زدست محبوب ندانم چون کنم از هجر رویش دیده جیهون کنم از هجر رویش دیده جیهون کنم.
This is our Roqe special, a tribute to Shajarian. I feel very honored with all these different guests coming on our program. Our next guest is no exception. Farid Zoland, the legendary Afghan songwriter and composer. Throughout his career, Farid has composed and produced many of the most iconic Iranian songs for major artists like Dariush, like Abi, like Gugush, Haide, Moin. And right now, Farid Zoland joins me from Los Angeles today. Hello, sir.
Hello, how are you? حالتون خوبه انشالله. من که امروز ذره حالم خوب نیست به خاطر همین شنیدن این خبر درگذشت استاد شجریان و ایشون واقعا یک افتخار بود برای ملت ایران و هست همیشه و همیشه در دل مردم وجود داره، چون خواننده مردم بود. من از نزدیک نمیشناختمشون متاسفانه، اما مصاحبه‌هایشون رو گوش میدادم و راجع به کارشون رو گوش میدادم و راجع به موسیقی جهان بسیار اطلاع داشتن و بسیار انسان نازنین و انسانی بود که فقط به مردم فکر میکرد. و تمام تاریخ زندگی کارش ببینین شما همین، این یکی از مهمترین رکن زندگی کاری این مرد بود.
Farid, what made him so vital? You've worked with the best of the best in musical artists in Iran. What made him so vital, so significant as a musical artist?
برای اینکه ایشون اصولی کار کرد، اصولی خوانندگی را آغاز کرد، اصولی خوند و صدای بی‌نظیر خداوند بهش داده بود و چیزایی که انتخاب میکرد و میخوند و کارهایی که براش آهنگسازان خوب سنتی میساختند، این بود که ایشون بسیار خودش رو جدا کرده بود از خیلیا. اما مسئله که هست اینجا اینه که مهمترین رکن قضیه اینه که در این 40 سال اون چیز رو خواند که طرف مردم بود، اون چیز رو خواند که به مردم فکر میکرد و این شد که در دل مردم همیشه جا داره و در دل مردم هست. این قابل توجه هنرمندانی که به مردمش فکر نمیکنه و امیدوارم که همه اینو بدونن که با مردم میشه شما به همه جا برسین و در دل مردم باشین، نه اینکه فقط صحبت بشه راجع به شما تا مردم از شما یاد کنن. آقای شجریان، استاد شجریان همیشه در دل مردم و در فکر مردم هست و من به عنوان یک هنرمند بسیار کوچک به همه تسلیت میگم جامعه هنری، خانواده عزیزش و تمام ملت ایران.
What made his impact, Farid Jan, so great, so huge, so important beyond the music? Why does it feel like the entire nation and all of the Iranians in the diaspora are feeling this sadness as if we've lost somebody from our own family today?
ژیان جان، مسئله که هست اینجا اینه که امپکت ایشون اینه که امروز شما موسیقی سنتی که گوش میدادین، اشخاص بزرگ مثل ایشون و آقای مثلا جلیل شهناز و دیگر نوازنده های برجسته که هستن و بودن و خواننده هایی بودن، شما امروز آواز شجریان رو از گوشه و کنار میشنوین. یعنی اون تکنیکی که استفاده میکرد جوانای امروز دارن استفاده میکنن ازش و این مهمترین امپکتی که داره و امپکت مهمش اینه که این آدم خواننده مردم بود.
Do you, as a musician, is there anything that you can say you learned by observing Maestro Shajarian over the years?
من چندین مصاحبه و صحبتاشون رو چی در تلویزیون و چی در خواندنی خونده بودم. ایشون نه تنها در موسیقی سنتی ایران تبحر خاص داشتن، ایشون هم در موسیقی جهان رو میشناخت. مثلا راجع به موسیقی هند صحبت میکرد و ایشون که بسیار درست و معلومات پرمعنایی داشت از موسیقی هند ایشون. و حضورتان عرض کنم که من خودم خب از اینکه موسیقی منم متأثر از موسیقی سنتی هست و دستگاه ها رو تا جایی که توانم هست میشناسم و در صدای ایشون این دستگاه و اینا رو بیشتر به وجودم بیشتر وصله و بیشتر برام ارزش بیشتر پیدا میکنه وقتی با صدای ایشون گوش میدم.
A final question. You've spent most of your career creating these iconic songs that are in popular music, Iranian popular music. But Iranian classical music, as you said earlier, Shajarian has created the kind of music that even young people today around the world still recognize and know. What was it about what he does as a classical musician that broke through the barriers that, say, Western classical musicians don't break through to young audiences?
این شخص، این انسان نازنین تعصب نداشت و ورایتی های زیاد را امتحان میکرد و تجربه میکرد. امینی که به گوشه های مختلف مراجعه میکرد و نوآوری میآورد به خوندنش و کارش، این برای مردم و برای جوانای امروز و کسان دیگه که با علاقمند به صدای ایشون بودن، این بسیار مسئله بود که بهش چه میگن به اصطلاح علاقمندتر میشدن، اینجوری بگم. اما مسئله که هست اینجا اینه که من وقتی صدای ایشون رو گوش دادم، چون من اولین کسی که من در موسیقی ایرانی لذت بردم از صداش و توجه من به دستگاه ایرانی جلب شد توسط استاد خدا مغفرتشون کنه و زنده یاد بنان بودن. و بعد از ایشون من با آقای شجریان بسیار علاقه‌مند شدم و همیشه کارهای ایشون رو گوش میدادم. حتی با دوستان موزیسینمون می نشستیم و گوش میدادیم به صدای ایشون. و این نوآوریایی که آوردن و موزیسینا و آهنگسازایی که در کار سنتی بودن، اینا کارهای جدید آوردن و فرمای جدید آوردن، این بود که یک چیز جدید به مردم ارائه دادن از موسیقی سنتی ایران.
Farid Zoland, it is sad circumstances, but it's always important and appreciative to hear your voice.
همیشه در دل مردم، در قلب مردم وجود داره و هست و خواهد بود و راهش ادامه خواهد داشت. شما فکر کنین هایده مگر رفت از این دنیا؟ هایده همیشه زنده است. هنرمند واقعی، خواننده خوب، موزیسین خوب، خواننده که به مردم فکر میکنه، درست فکر میکنه، مردم متوجه میشن که این هنرمندشون چقدر بهش علاقه‌مندن و چقدر مردم رو دوست داره. و این مسئله است که اینا رو جدا کرده از دیگران. مثلا این مثالی که میزنم، میگم هایده هیچ وقت فراموش نمیشه. ایشون ژانر موسیقیش مثلا یه مقداری فرق میکرد، اما آقای شجریان هم همیشه در موسیقی سنتی ایران وجود خواهد داشت و سبک و سیاقش رو مطمئنم که جوانای امروز و فردا ادامه خواهند داد.
I thank you so much for this today. مرسی فرید جان.
قربانت عزیزم. تسلیت میگم بازم به همه ملت ایران.
Bye bye.
ای یوسف خوشنام ما، خوش میروی بر بام ما، ای در شکست جام ما، ای در شکست جام ما، ای بر دریده دام ما.
All of this music, of course, that you're hearing, I mean, it should be implicit, but it is all Master Mohammad-Reza Shajarian that we're playing throughout this program. This is a Roqe special, a tribute to Shajarian. And our next guest is in Stockholm, Sweden. She is a musician, a writer, and performer. She's known as a solo artist and, of course, for her work in the group Obgis. Safoura Safavi joins us right now from Stockholm. Hello.
Hello, Jian.
Nice to talk to you again.
Thank you. Likewise.
Yeah, tell me how you're feeling, and what your reaction was when you heard the news today that Maestro Shajarian had died.
Yes, of course, it was very sad news. I heard it in the afternoon, and yeah, it's heavy because he was a maestro, and he's not with us anymore. So, yeah. What can I say? It's our condolences to his family and loved ones and the whole nation the Iranian community, of course.
Do you have a perspective on what made him so vital and so significant as a musical artist?
Of course, because he touched so many hearts. He was the voice of so many people. Unfortunately, we are suppressed people, Iranians, and he was a voice. He expressed what we can't express. And he was also a brave man and expressed it in words and action. So I think he meant a lot to many people and to our culture.
You know, Babak Amini was just saying that he Mohammad-Reza Shajarian set an example by being so brave that people should speak out. Would that be true for you too?
Of course. I mean, it's very hard for us as Iranians to be brave because we're living such a strange times, and it's a very complex situation. But of course, Mr. Shajarian was an example of that and an inspiration to remind us to talk from love, to use what we have, the tools we have. And of course, as artists, I mean, I really respect him for doing that. I mean, we have a short time on earth and he used it in such a beautiful way.
One of the things that I've been talking about that amazes me about him is that he was officially a classical musician, and yet people of different ages and musical genres. I mean, you're known as a rock, punk, pop, ska, reggae musician. But I'm imagining that you could identify Shajarian music, that you grew up listening to it, and that it may have even had an impact on you musically.
Yes, as you know, I said I grew up in Sweden. So I was and have been doing other genres of music. So I've been far away from the traditional Persian music. But I mean, for me, he represents my family. Like he's the voice of relatives, of family, of Iran. And I didn't know him personally, but I got to meet Humayun when I was a teenager, and we connected talking about flamenco and. Because I was doing flamenco then. And of course, so I mean, there is, I feel a very strong connection and have been, of course, influenced in the sense that it's a part of my heritage.
There are a few people and there are a few moments that seem to be able to universally unite us as Iranians around the world.
Yes.
We talked about that in our last conversation on this show.
Yeah.
This feels like one of those moments. Before I let you go, can you speak to that? I mean, you're sitting in Stockholm. We've been interviewing people all over the world, and there is a common feeling right now.
Yes, I think it's, for me, I believe Maestro Shajarian, he lived and spoke from his heart, and that speaks to everybody. And it's a reminder, that's what we talked about last time as well. It's a reminder that if we all can be brave enough to feel and express ourselves with love, we are connected, and we can come over this very, very hard situation we're in right now. We can, and I mean, his legacy will live on and inspire generations to come. That's the beauty of art and music, that it lives, survives us people.
Indeed. Safoura Jan, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for this today.
Likewise, dear. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
همه دریا از آن ما کنه دوست دلم دریا شد دادم به دستت مکش دریا بخون پروا کنه دوست مکش دریا
This is a Roqe special, a tribute to Shajarian. Our next guest is in New York City. Yahya Alkhansa is an acclaimed musician and a drummer. This guy is a great drummer. He was born in Tehran, started playing tonbak at the age of 9. He played traditional Persian music for about 7 years before switching to drum set at the age of 16. He has toured with many Iranian rock musicians and joined the 127 band in 2002. He's performed all over the world and started collaborating with Mohsen Namju in 2011 and continues to perform and record with Mohsen. Today, Yahya Alkhansa joins us from New York City right now. Hello, sir.
Hi, Jian. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm happy to have you on the show, but sad that it's on this news. I want to know, I guess, first off, how you are feeling and how you reacted to hearing the news that Ustad Shajarian has died.
Yeah, unfortunately, it is a pretty sad day, although I was expecting this because I had heard the news in the past days. But it is very sad. Every time a legendary musician passes away, I mean, I cannot help but think like how vulnerable we are all. Not just me as a musician, but how we all are. Because like to me, music is a very personal thing, and sometimes I feel like it lives in me as a living organism. So when and as you mentioned, when I was a kid, I started music with playing tombak. So I was at the beginning more into traditional music. It was later on when I switched to drum set that I switched to more like rock and other types of music. So as a kid, I used to listen to this type of music all the time, and it did influence me. So when I heard the news of passing of Ustad Shajarian, it really felt like a part of not just me, of all of us is gone.
Can you put into perspective, I mean, you're a guy, you're in New York City, you've been working in rock music for years, and you've been in both sides, you've been in Iran and outside of Iran. Can you put it into perspective for people outside of Iran, and even for non-Iranians, why this classical musician, this maestro, has had such an impact on Iranians of all different stripes, of all ages, both in Iran and in the diaspora?
With Ustad Shajarian, there's something very unique about him, and there are very, very few people, I would say, that was like him. Maybe Ustad Lutfi was another person, or there are very few people. He was very a unifying person, like it's not just about his music or his voice, which were extraordinarily good, but what was in his music and what was in his character that was really unifying, especially with such a divided society as ours. I'm pretty sure there are many divided societies, but ours is also one.
Yeah.
And he was a very unique, unifying character. And I think it will be years and years before someone who's remotely close to him would appear again.
Why did he have such an impact on different generations? Like when I was speaking to Farid Zoland, I was saying, you can't. It's hard to think of a Western classical musician. I mean, other than classical music players, being having the impact that Shajarian has. There, even young people, young Iranians know him, know his music, appreciate him, idolize him. How did he break through?
Well, I think a part of it has to do with how the things were after the revolution, especially because most types of music were banned. So I remember when I was a kid, it wasn't like that you could hear any type of music on radio or TV. So he was one of the very few people, and I mean, I know it's sad in general that we didn't have many choices, but the fact that we had him as one of our choices is great because we were lucky enough to hear him instead of many other musicians that were on TV or radio. And the thing with his music is not only it appeals to people who are into classical music, he would also appeal to religious people because of he has some pieces that are connected with like religion, and they were honestly, as a musician, they're beautiful pieces. So I think, and also like obviously his masterpiece, I would say, Morghe Sahar, which would appeal to any person, like no matter what kind of religion you have, what kind of political view you have.
Mm-hmm.
That is sort of like our national anthem for everyone in Iran. So that's why I think he would appeal to everyone in that country.
It's interesting that you talk about him being so unifying because, as I said in the intro to this show, there's we're, as Iranians, we get used to sad news, especially in recent weeks, months, and years. But this one feels like everyone is punched in the gut. It feels like we are experiencing this together. It feels like he is unifying Iranians of all stripes around the world through his death. How important, do you have a sense of at all of how important what he had to say politically was in recent years?
Well, I remember when the Green Revolution happened, he was really supportive of the movement, which basically he came out and said, I am the voice of these people. And even back then, I remember even people who opposed the Green movement would not dare say anything about Ustad Shajarian because, I mean, he was so loved by everyone that I don't think even someone like Ahmadinejad would have dared to say something against him. So people really connected with him, especially after the Green movement.
What is your, if you can remember back to being a kid and hearing him, and before I let you go, what is your most poignant or fondest memory of hearing Shajarian or seeing him in concert or experiencing his music?
I only saw him once in concert, and I was lucky because the sound engineer of the concert was a friend of mine who brought me to the show. I was really lucky to hear that. And but I remember the first time I heard him, obviously when I was a kid, and my mother used to listen to him, and I heard Morghe Sahar, obviously, which was all the time, not just in radio, in TV and everywhere. But when I listened to Shab Sukut Kavir, that was when I realized how deep his music is.
Yahya John, by the way, you're continuing to work with Mohsen Namju. Have you talked to him today yet? Do you know how he's feeling about this sad news?
I haven't. I mean, not today. I haven't talked to him because I know he's at university. He has back-to-back classes today, so I haven't talked to him yet. But I know how sad he is because he really, really admired Ustad Shajarian. I mean, I know it personally because he used to talk about him all the time. And also, like in many of our concerts, he used to sing a part of one of his songs before we start one of our own songs, and he always said like how big of an impact him and Ustad Alizadeh had on him, and I know that he actually saw him a couple of times and he really liked him, and he also got some very good advices on singing from him.
Listen, I'm a fan of what you do. I appreciate the time you've taken today and your perspective on this sad news. I hope we speak again soon.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Yahya.
Definitely. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
This is a special edition of Roqe on the sad passing of the Maestro Mohammad-Reza Shajarian. You've been hearing his music throughout this episode. I am honored to have this next guest. Actually, I've been honored to have all these guests on, but this next guest especially as well. Hamid Motebassem is a classical Persian tar and setar player. He studied with musicians like Mohammad-Reza Lotfi, Hossein Alizadeh, and Houshang Zarif. In 1991, Hamid founded the Dastan Ensemble, which has long established itself as one of the outstanding groups of contemporary Persian music. And right now, Hamid Motebassem joins us from Netherlands. Hello, Hamid John.
Hello, salam.
Salam. I'm so sorry that I have to reach you at a time like this. We would like to have you on the program for other reasons. Maybe tell me how you are feeling upon hearing the news that Maestro Ustad Shajarian has died.
استاد شجریان در واقع یکی از نشانهای ارزشمند موسیقی ایران، کسی که در واقع غیر از شخصیت هنری، شخصیت اجتماعی خیلی ارزنده‌ای داره و به همین دلیل هم در دل همه مردمان ایران جایی داره و ارزش‌های هنریش خارج از مرزهای ایران فراتر رفته و جهانی شده. از این نظر در واقع وقتی که شجریان از موسیقی ایران میره، مثل این که یک پهلوانی از یک قهرمانی از یک سرزمینی بره.
Hamid, اگه میتونم شخصی بپرسم, what did Shajarian mean to you personally?
من با شجریان هیچ وقت فرصت همکاری پیدا نکردم، به خاطر اینکه به دلایل مختلف امکانی پیش نیامد. منتها همیشه میدونم که اون منو دوست داشت و من که اون میدونست که من خیلی اونو دوست دارم و همیشه ارتباط خیلی خوب هنری بین ما بود. من در یه دوره‌ای با پسرش همایون در کنسرت با گروه دستان بودیم و بعد از اون من اون پروژه بزرگ سیمرغ رو به وجود آوردم که همایون خوانندش بود و ایشون چندین بار راجع به سیمرغ در جاهای در مصاحبه‌های مختلف صحبت کرد و در کنسرت ما شرکت کرد و میدونم که نظر همیشه مثبت و خیلی خوبی راجع به ما داشت.
همین جان، چرا در موزیک اینقدر استاد شجریان واجب بود؟ What made him so vital and significant as a musical artist?
خب شجریان فقط یه خواننده بزرگ نیست. شجریان از نظر هنری وقتی بخوایم بررسیش کنیم در واقع خواننده است که تمام مشخصات خوانندگان بزرگ قدیم رو داشت. چرا؟ به خاطر اینکه خیلی تلاش کرد برای آموختن. یعنی از هر جای دنیا اگه کسی میدونست که اگه یه نفر هست که یه چیزی میدونه راجع به آواز، حتما به سراغ اون میرفت و اون فن و اون استایل و اونجا از اونم یاد میگرفت و این از نظر هنری باعث شده بود که در واقع شجریان تمام مشخصات خوب خوانندگان قدیم رو داشته باشه و ضمناً روش خودش، استایل خودش رو هم پیاده کنه و همین باعث شده که شجریان در آواز ردیف ایرانی، آواز سنتی و مقامی ایرانی جایی به ویژه داره که هیچ کس قبل از اون به این مرتبه به این اندازه دست پیدا نکرده. به علاوه شجریان در یک دوره‌ای زندگی کرد که تحولات سیاسی و اجتماعی در ایران صورت گرفت و همراهی ساده و پای به پایش با مردم ایران باعث شد که از محبوبیت ویژه‌ای در کنار خوانندگیش برخوردار بشه. یعنی یک خواننده‌ای که تمام مشخصات یک هنرمند ارزشمند رو داره، صداش دلنشینه و اجراهاش بسیار از نظر فنی در عرضه ارزشمند و بالاست. به علاوه یک شخصیت اجتماعی هم داره که در واقع اون شخصیت اجتماعی باعث میشه که مردم بیشتر دوستش بدارن، به خاطری که احساس میکنن از خودشونه، برادرشونه، پدرشونه، فامیلشونه و نزدیکه. در واقع این فامیلی بین شجریان و تمام مردم ایران به این گونه برقرار شده.
On that final point, yes, سوال آخری, a final question. You're sitting in the Netherlands. We're in Canada.
Yeah.
There are Iranians all over the world, and of course in Iran, feeling the impact of the passing of this man. His impact goes beyond music. It goes beyond his voice. What was it about him that has made him so important to so many of us around the world?
خب به هر حال هنر یک ابزاری است برای پیوند قلب‌ها، پیوند همه انسان‌ها در جهان. ما میدونیم مثلا وقتی راجع به موزارت صحبت میکنیم، راجع به بتهوون صحبت میکنیم، راجع به پیکاسو صحبت میکنیم، راجع به هنرمندان بزرگ صحبت میکنیم، وقتی یه هنرپیشه‌ای مثل کرک داگلاس مثلا میره، اینا در واقع یه بخشی از دل ما رو با خودش میبره، به خاطر اینکه ما باش زندگی کردیم، باش عشق ورزیدیم، باش شادی کردیم. یعنی شخصیت‌های هنری خیلی فرق میکنن با شخصیت‌های مثلا سیاسی، رئیس جمهوری مملکتی یا هر کسی دیگری. اگر مثلا یک شخصی مثل ملک الشعرای بهار همیشه در دل مردم ایران جای داره، اگرچه یک بخشی از زندگیش فعالیت‌های سیاسی هم داشته و نمیدونم مثلا وزیر فرهنگ بوده، ولی ارزش اصلی اون به خاطر هنری است که به قول معروف میگه تنها هنره که همیشه میمونه. یعنی غیر از هنر که تاج سر آفرینش است، دوران هیچ سلطنتی پایدار نیست. اینه که در واقع باعث میشه که یک هنرمند جایگاه ویژه‌ای پیدا کنه در دل مردم. چرا؟ چون ابزار هنر ابزار پیوند مثل طبیعت، مثل گل، مثل گیاه، مثل چمن که آدم نمیتونه هیچ وقت ازش بکنه و هیچ وقت نمیتونه ازش چیز بدی ببینه. همیشه چیزای خوب هنر به انسان میده و شجریان هم از همین نظر بسیار اهمیت داره.
Beautifully said. خیلی متشکرم حمید جان. مرسی که وقت شما رو دادید. Thank you so much.
خیلی خوشحال شدم.
خداحافظ.
خدا نگهدار.
به شب وصلت جان دیوانه شدم، به شمع رویت جان پروانه شدم، جان پروانه شدم.
This is our Roqe special, a tribute to Shajarian. And we've come to our last guest. He's in London, England. He's a friend of ours, friend of this program, and he's a talented guy. Ali Azimi, a rock musician and singer. He was the vocalist and songwriter of the band Radio Tehran until the early 2010s. After they disbanded, Ali embarked on a solo career and released his debut album, Mr. Mean, in 2013. He has become massively popular for his music in the diaspora and back in Iran, and his latest album is called Of Love and Other Evils. Ali Azimi joins us from London, England today. Hi, Ali.
Hi to you, Jian.
Nice to have you back on the show, Ali Jan. A difficult day for Iranians around the world, as you know. Tell me, what went through your head, what went through your emotions upon hearing the news that Ustad Shajarian has died?
Well, it's a sad day for all of us. It's a day that all Iranians, I guess, they're all feeling the same pain. Like Dard Mushtarak that he's used in his own song, and it's a very rare moment that we all sharing this pain of losing such a legend and such an icon.
It really does feel weirdly unifying, and here we are unified in pain. That's a point that people have been making. First of all, what did Shajarian mean to you personally, either musically or culturally?
Well, to be 100% honest with you, I'm not I'm not the best person. When I was asked to do this interview, first thought that went to my head was, I'm not like the greatest person to talk about an icon in traditional Iranian music. But like everyone else, like a normal, any other person, any other Iranian, to me he was a legend. Someone who did what he did in the highest level possible, and that to me it shows character. It's beyond being an artist, being a singer. It's beyond all that. He's a cultural icon, and that's why I'm very sad today.
You know, the last time you and I talked, at least on the show, we talked about the perils and the poignancy of speaking out politically as an artist, as a musician. And in your case, it basically meant that you had to live in the diaspora. Do you have a sense of how important what Mohammad-Reza Shajarian had to say politically has been in recent years?
Of course. I mean, towards the final decades of his life, he kind of made a bold move. And as you know, after the 88 demonstrations, he clearly took a path which changed everything for him and everything around him. The way the government treated him changed forever. And he never had. I believe he never had any other concerts in Iran after that. And so he sided with the people, and that's what a legend does.
Babak Amini spoke earlier on this program about his courage, Shajarian's brave protestations and speaking out, setting an example for others, other artists or other folks around the world or in Iran. Do you feel that way?
Yeah, I actually feel very inspired by him. I mean, what he did, his sentences, what he said about the uprising and everything, the way he kind of separated himself and stood with the people, that was very, very intriguing and very. It was a very charming move that will stay forever within our hearts. He will be a legend, not only because of his music, his mastership in traditional music, the singing, the beautiful voice that he had, but the other reason in my mind is because he took the right side, and he was brave enough to say what lots of other artists and icons didn't. So he separated himself from the rest, to me.
Ali John, it's always nice to talk to you. I really appreciate you taking the time today, and I hope to see you soon, brother.
Jian, absolute pleasure for me as well.
Merci, Azam. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.
There it is, our final interview for this Roqe special. Ali Azimi in London, England. Let me bring Shaya in here. Shaya, turn your mic on there, buddy. That's been quite a show.
Yes. Sad show.
Sad show. A lot of important voices. A lot of. I learned a lot throughout this program.
Yes.
And I would be. By the way, you've been picking a lot of the music we talked about and some surprises you've given me in between the guests. But I'm guessing I'm guessing that you were saving Morgh Sahar for the end.
Exactly.
Because we haven't heard it.
Yeah.
Everybody's talked about it, but we haven't heard it.
Yes, exactly.
Before we go there and before I say goodbye, Shaya, it's funny because since we started this program, we've almost had a running joke where I joke every episode that you want to play Shajarian and Mohammad-Reza Shajarian. You're not just a fan, you're a devotee, I would say.
Yes.
And I know that you were very upset this morning when we heard the news. Tell me what you've been feeling today before we go, and what it's been like to hear all these folks while we've been doing these interviews.
It was really sad. It's like truly I lost one of my, my family. It's I couldn't stop my crying. I couldn't stop my crying, and because imagine you listen to the voice of one people for all your life, and it's been a part of you, as I don't remember which of our guests said. It became one part of my body, and I lost it today. So I was expecting this will happen sooner or later, but I'm very sad. I just want to say one quote. It's one of our, I think it's the second song that we produced in our band. It has a quote that it says, شدی با من زمستان است بیداد عشق داند هم نوا بابم شدم با تو کمانچه تار تنبک حنجره فریاد زیر و بم. And we wrote this poem 10 years ago for Mohammad-Reza Shajarian, and today I felt it. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that, Shaya. This is full time for Roqe for today. Thanks to all of you out there for your interest in this program and for supporting what we do. I hope this special has worked for you. For all things Roqe, you can go to our website, roqemedia.com, where you can also support us by becoming a Roqe patron. Any amount helps. Thanks to the amazing team who put this special together on less than a day's notice. We decided on all of this morning, and now it's the early evening. Our goal, or it's mid-evening actually, our goal remains to keep building a new audiovisual encyclopedia of Iranian diaspora identity. So we'll keep moving forward with that. I'm Jian Ghomeshi. Mizun Bashin.